Good morning, everyone, and good morning to our live stream people. Welcome. Thank you for live streaming with us. Just a couple of announcements before I introduce our speakers. Don't forget that we are going to the theater this weekend on Sunday. If you choose to ride the shuttle will leave here at 2 o'clock. It's at the Woodlawn Theater. For most of us know where the Woodlawn Theater is. Then we are going, let's see, I'm backwards here. On March 31st, we have our lunch at Anne Marie's. We will have the shuttle from here. I think it's at 10:30. If you need directions, we can get Joe to send directions out. I'll get them out to you. Then let's see. We're going to the Children's Bereavement Center on April the 14th. There will be a shuttle that leaves here, and the cost for that is $15. Okay. The cost for the I didn't say the cost for the play. The cost for the play is $20. And we do have some open seats. They're not all filled. So if somebody, even if you know somebody that's not in Keys, you're welcome to invite them to come along. And I think that's, Fiesta. Don't forget Fiesta on April 21st. It's a little early, but we'll go ahead and announce that. We have Spencer Brown here today from Care Manager with Accountable Aging. And he has brought along Kelly Finley from Edward Jones and Brennan Bowes from the law offices of Carol Birch. So Spencer, if you want to come up.
By my count, we only have one ticket left.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we only have one. Okay, so we only have one ticket for ragtime left. So that's good. It's good to have that all filled. So Spencer, you want to come on up now?
Thank you, Spencer. Well, my name is Kelly Finley. I wanted to just briefly give you an introduction about my background so you know who I am and why I do what I do. I met Spencer, probably about, 6, 7 years ago when I moved here from Oklahoma. I used to work in an assisted living and memory care, so I spent about 9 years working in senior living, and I have my gerontology degree, which that's how Spencer and I bonded, because gerontology, which is the study of aging, is actually a degree that you can't get here in San Antonio anymore. So those of us that have it, we're kind of a small pool. But when I worked in senior living, I worked in the sales and marketing side. So I was the person who you would call and say, hey, living at home isn't an option anymore. I need to come check out your place. And what I wanted to present on you guys today is some of the common things that I ran into in my previous career and that I get to help coach people on in my current career as a financial advisor. I made the move to Edward Jones about 3 years ago, and the biggest reason why was I dealt with a lot of people that hadn't planned and prepared financially. And retirement is a season of life that sometimes can span decades. So there's a lot that goes into it, and that's exactly why we are here today to give you some talking points. So two of the biggest things that I encountered when I was working in sales and marketing in the communities was people would come in and say, great, need to move in, and we get to the cost, right? Everything costs something. And we would start talking, and they'd be like, well, I get $1,500 a month in Social Security. And I'm like, great, but that's not enough. Well, I've got Medicare. Does Medicare cover it? No, it does not. And you would be surprised the amount of people that I encountered that they didn't know that. Medicare can cover your short-term skilled nursing stays and things like your rehab or your home health or your hospice, but it doesn't cover your long-term expenses. So then we get to the point of, well, where else are these monies coming from? And really that's your retirement portfolio, your nest egg that you've planned and prepared for. So you all are probably well into that season. Some of this information is probably not new to you, but for those of you that are yet to get into that season, I wanted to make you aware. Social Security was not meant to fully fund your retirement. Medicare is not going to cover your actual living expenses. So what I do as your financial professional is we look at your overall portfolio. What have you done so far? Is it going to be able to sustain you through end of life? And in the ideal situation, we have more dollars than heartbeats. And if we do our job right and we protect that portfolio from craziness that happens in the market, like what's been happening in the last week or two, we hopefully will have an estate to leave behind. And that kind of segues into Brennan. So Brennan, come on up. Oh, I think I was talking about spouses getting on the same page. I'm so sorry. I have a little pamphlet right up there at the front that very well marries with what Brendan's about to talk about, but estate planning and how to kind of get your affairs in order, conversations to have. So, Brendan.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. Thanks for having us back today. My name is Brennan Bowes. I'm an attorney at the law offices of Carol Birch here in town. We practice what is called elder law, which is focused on the needs of seniors and their families. We also help folks with special needs in planning for them as well. A lot of the things we do today, that our areas of practice are estate planning, which we'll talk about some today, probate after someone passes away, and then my favorite thing that we do is help folks plan for long-term care needs. As Kelly said, Medicare is not going to pay for that. Your Medicare Advantage plan is not going to pay for that. It's either private pay or Medicaid. Medicaid, of course, is a program that is designed for folks that don't have very much. But what we can do a lot of times is get Medicaid, someone eligible for Medicaid, and still preserve assets for the spouse that's at home, or in some situations for the children, especially if they have special needs and things like that. So I just wanted to kind of give a brief overview of what we do. Estate planning in general, I think most people when they think of it is, let's get my will or my trust in place. And that's a big part of it. Who gets my things after I'm gone? That's a big part of estate planning. But the other side of the coin that people often don't think about, because it's not a lot of fun to think about, is planning for incapacity. Incapacity is something that will touch many or most of us at some point, whether directly or indirectly. And if you haven't done that planning, gotten the right documents in place, powers of attorney in particular, it can really make things difficult on your family. And so what I try to stress to people when I come out into the community and have these kind of talks is that, you know, it's not the most fun thing to think about, but get your affairs in order. It's the biggest gift you can leave to your spouse and your family is making things smooth on them, whether that's after you're gone or if you have a stroke or dementia and become incapacitated, so that somebody can keep the ball rolling, can keep the bills paid, keep the family afloat while that person is incapacitated. So planning for incapacity is just something that gets glossed over a lot, and I just want to stress it's a big part of planning for aging. Beyond that, powers of attorney are for finances, allowing someone to access your bank accounts and funds. If they need to sell the house to pay for your care, they can use the power of attorney to do that. It gives them a lot of power, but of course it involves a lot of trust as well. And so I counsel my clients a lot about making sure we find the right person for this role. It's got to be somebody that you have full faith in. Not only just the trust factor, but you want somebody that is somewhat financially savvy, that can manage things the way you would want to manage them. But the biggest thing is not just getting your documents in place, but having these conversations with your family. Letting them know what your wishes are if you become incapacitated or after you're gone, so that everybody's on the same page when these situations arise, so that it minimizes the disputes and the strife and the stress amongst the family if you've had these conversations in advance. If I become terminally ill, here's what I would like to happen. I do or I don't want to be put on artificial life support, things like that. Again, not the most fun conversations, but very, very important. And it truly is, planning in advance, a huge gift to your family. I just can't stress that enough. But with that, the other side of the coin, like I say, that we do is planning for long-term care needs. Medicaid is the big program that will help pay for that, but it often requires a lot of maneuvering to get there. So if you find yourself or someone that you know is in a situation where they are just literally draining their life savings every month in order to pay for their spouse's care or pay for their mother's care or their loved one's care, come talk to us. There may be things we can do to help. So with that, I will pass the ball to Spencer.
Thank you. Let's see. Thank you so much, Brennan. And as I said, we're trying to just kind of do, not even really a recap of what we talked about, but just kind of talk about some of the areas where we concentrate. And all three of us in our professions, we're all dealing with families that are experiencing different issues in aging. They all have some kind of financial component, whether people are paying out of their own assets and accounts, or whether they do have insurance policies, long-term care insurance, or if they have some government benefits through Social Security and Medicare that provides some assistance. It's not a panacea, but we all do that as a component. And in terms of planning purposes, the legal part is really important. That's why when we came in September, I thought it was important that I invite a couple of trusted professionals in other arenas, because we're all dealing with the same families. And just look around, think about your own situation. There's a lot to us. God made us in such a way that, we have these bodies that change. We have families. We have, some of us have different sets of circumstances. We all have different circumstances, support-wise, financially, all those things. So, from my perspective, my role at Family Tree Private Care, I'm a third-party specialist in aging. So, as a consultant, much like a financial financial advisor, I look at as someone's professional consultant that helps make sense of the assets and the planning.
There you go.
We're just as flexible as can be. Thank you so much for your help. A financial advisor helps people navigate preparing for retirement, for college planning, for weddings, for gifting, for living. The legal component, and the lawyers are third-party specialists in helping you protect your assets, dictate what you want to be done, deciding now how you want things to go to the best of your ability before it may be more difficult. As a consultant in aging, much like a legal or financial professional, I'm really helping, our team is helping families with the coordination of services, knowing what the options are. Things like living at home. When living at home is different than it used to be, it's more difficult. Someone may not be functioning as well at home, and there may need to be some modifications, either to some services to be brought into the home to help keep someone independently, or dealing with transition. So I'm that consultant in aging. And so options, things like assisted living, memory care, I mean, we've talked about a few terms, acronyms or actual words like memory care, and we take for granted sometimes that not everyone knows what memory care means. We might say ADL, which stands for Activities of Daily Living, and take it for granted that not everyone understands that. So we can help guide those aging issues and helping coordinate those things. We talk about aging in place, for example. I don't know how many of you have heard things like that. People, as your needs change, not having to move and move and move around as you need more and more help or different kinds of help. So my role as a consultant in aging is similar to what Brendan and Kelly are doing in law and finance. It's helping come up with a plan and helping you execute a plan. We're all at a stage, or will be at a stage, where we're going to have to decide how we're going to carry out any planning that we've done, or we might be confronted with a situation where we think, I don't think I've planned as well for this, or this never came up to me, and now here it is in front of me. How am I going to handle it? So I just wanted to at least also say that we intersect a lot in this space, even though we have different credentials and expertise. And the other thing that I think, from my vantage point, that I did talk about when we were together in September is building a team. Thinking about you and your own preferences for your own future, thinking about your family, your biological, your spouse, and your kids. The informal support system, church, families, bridge groups, the people that are your lifeline, your medical professionals. It is true that the older people get, the more medications are taken, the more doctors are seen. That doesn't mean it's bad, it's typical. So your medical team, your legal, financial team. So if you can really think about all the people that are important to you, building a team is important. And that can help us age well, help us age gracefully. Because as a gerontologist, I'm a very firm believer that growing up and maturing, whether that's 80 or 90, doesn't have to be a letdown. It doesn't have to be something we dread. It's something that we can embrace, accept, and how we're going to live. So let's pause for a minute. Some of you, a number of you, or just a show of hands again, who of you who were here in September? Okay, a good point. So, not that we remember everything we said then either, but let's just kind of open it up a little bit to things that you want to dig deeper in, questions you have in the area of financial, legal, and just issues in aging in general. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so, and I know I'm speaking to someone who can see me. I know you have people who are live streamed there, but just the question was about revocable and irrevocable trusts. And I'm going to have Brennan come up. He's the attorney that deals in those areas.
Okay, I think they wanted us to use this one. So just stepping back in the broader sense, a trust is a document. It's a big umbrella term that means a lot of different things. There's lots of different types of trusts. When most people say they got a trust done instead of a will or in conjunction with a will, most of the time they're talking about what's called a revocable living trust. A revocable living trust is a way to estate plan to pass your things on in a way that avoids the probate process. Probate is the court process that you have to go to transfer title to things that someone owned after they pass away. Things like houses or financial accounts, things like that. A trust is a document where you actually place your assets in the name of the trust so that the trust is the owner of your assets now. And most of the time when we set up a revocable living trust for someone, we name them the trustee of their own trust, which means they're in charge of their own assets. So during their lifetime, they have complete control over what they have earned and kept and built up. And it's revocable, which means if they change their mind, they can go in and change the document, determine how they want things divided, or they can tear it up and start over again. So that's a revocable trust. Many times when someone passes away, their revocable trust now becomes irrevocable, which means that the kids can't come in and change dad's plans after he's gone. So there are other types of irrevocable trusts that are designed for asset protection and things like that. Texas does not recognize asset protection trusts. You'd have to get that done by a lawyer in a different state, but those are irrevocable trusts. The idea is that you are giving up control of your assets, therefore they should not be counted against you. But many times, like I say, a revocable trust during someone's lifetime becomes irrevocable after their death. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
In other words, go around probate court as well.
That's the...
Since that's such a horror, and I witnessed it, just stay away from probate court.
That's usually the idea behind setting up a living trust. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Any other questions for any of us?
Last time, I'm not sure if it was you, but I think it was, talked about a ladybird deed about your home.
Mm-hmm. A ladybird deed is another estate planning tool that we use. A ladybird deed is a way to pass on a piece of property, a house or a piece of land, outside of the probate process. So many of your assets will pass outside of probate anyway. If you've got life insurance, you designate a beneficiary of that life insurance. That is a non-probate asset. It goes to the beneficiary without having to go to court. If you put a beneficiary on your financial accounts, on your IRA, then again, that passes outside of probate. Those beneficiary designations are contracts with the financial institution that override what's in your will, essentially. The bank is going to honor the beneficiary designation even if your will says something differently. So a ladybird deed is kind of the same principle. It works sort of like a beneficiary designation for a piece of land. It's a deed that you file in the deed records while you're alive. And that deed says that John and Jane Doe, a married couple, own this piece of property. And at their deaths, the property should pass to their 2 children. And that deed is filed in the deed records while John and Jane are still alive. What John and Jane keep, though, is the right to live in the house for the rest of their life, the right to mortgage or sell or do whatever they want to do with the property, or the right to change or take back the deed. So it truly stays yours for the rest of your life, the piece of property does. But at your death, it's already in the deed records that the two kids are now the record owners. So there's no need to go to probate court to transfer title to that piece of property. So a mortgage on a home complicates things. If you leave it to your surviving spouse, first of all, the mortgage company usually will allow things to keep going. As long as the payments are made, they are not going to require the surviving spouse to refinance the mortgage or things like that. But at the death of the second spouse, if it passes to children, the mortgage company can require them to qualify financially for it. Even though the title is in their name, the mortgage is a different story. So there's legal title, and then there's the contract that you have with the bank or the lender who helped you purchase the house. You can get legal title in your name, but the mortgage is still out there as a separate issue.
Really, I have two questions. And I don't know if this is within your expertise, but I've had several people ask me my opinion of reverse mortgages. And so I used to work with conventional mortgages, and then they started, equity loans. But reverse mortgage is something I'm completely unfamiliar with, so I really don't know what to tell them.
I will not pretend to be an expert in them myself, but I do run across them quite a bit. Kelly, can you run with that one?
The short answer is it depends on your financial situation. And that's something before you make a decision to execute that, whether to do that or find an alternative, that's something I can help with. We can look at all your financials and your cash flow, and we can run scenarios. If you went with a reverse mortgage versus if you didn't, you sold the house and moved into a community, for example. So it really depends on everybody's unique circumstances, because sometimes it can be a good fit, but other times it may not financially make sense to do so.
The thing I always counsel them on is, do you want to leave an asset to your heirs, or do you want to use the asset while you're alive?
Exactly, and that's exactly, what's most important to you. If you don't have children and there's no assets to leave behind, your situation might look very differently than if you had 5 children and it was important to you to have a sum of money to leave behind. But ultimately, my job as your financial advisor is to find out what's most important to you and to build that strategy or strategies around it to ensure that those are executed. And that's why I work with estate planning attorneys to make sure we have those legal documents and everybody's all on the same page. But yes.
It might be a good idea to just define reverse mortgages, because a lot of people are confused about what they actually are.
So reverse mortgages at a very high level is basically, let's say your house is worth $300,000. The bank basically is giving you a monthly payment every single month back to you and drawing down that $300,000 bucket. And then they own it, but at the end of the time when they've paid you all that $300,000, the house now is officially in the bank's name, not in your name. So it wouldn't pass to your children or to your heirs. So there's different types out there, and I'll be completely honest, I'm not extremely well versed in them, but I do have folks within my network that deal with reverse mortgages, so I lean on them to help us with all that understanding as well.
My understanding, though, that once all your equity is used up, there is no more money.
That is correct. So you've drawn down in that scenario your $300,000 and now you have zero. Exactly. So, and at that stage, maybe now you're a decade older and now you have less money. So that's why I really want to get ahead of that and have that conversation with you before you execute it. Because once you press go, you're committed at that point. Yeah, so the comment, Yeah, so the comment was she had a friend that had a reverse mortgage and went and sold the house and didn't realize she had to pay capital gains taxes. And it basically financially rocked the apple cart more than what she had originally intended. So that's why I strongly caution you to before making that decision to understand fully what it means, because obviously the older you get, your physical capabilities may change and that home may no longer be an appropriate setting for you, and you may need to move into an assisted living facility or a memory care community. But what does that mean? Because you don't have a house now to sell to be able to fund that. So that's certainly where I can come in and paint that complete financial picture for you. We look at all the assets that you have currently, what happens if we sold the home now versus if we waited, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a lot of nuances that go into it for sure. And with capital gains tax, to your point, that's usually when we want to involve a CPA as well. Because at the end of the day, Uncle Sam always wants his slice of the pie. So we want to make sure that we're legal, ethical, and moral in everything that we do too.
None of us work as agents to provide reverse mortgages, but I wanted to just say from my professional experience of working with families, clients that live at home, that is still most people's largest asset in terms of value. And it's not like you can just sell it and get $300,000 tomorrow when you need it. It's not as liquid. But I like the way it was explained by all of us who've commented on this process, that reverse mortgage, in my experience, is not something that we can unequivocally say, oh, I wouldn't go there. There are some situations where that could be a tool. Where I have seen it is where I've seen it is always when someone needs to generate some additional cash flow. Kelly explained how the payments come to you. So that's income that wasn't coming in before that can pay for some additional assistance as someone ages. That can help a lot of people. And so I just want to say that it's very hard to make too many assumptions, because even though there are a lot of people who are dealing with similar experiences, their financial picture, their family picture, their legal picture could be significantly different enough that the choices to make a reverse mortgage decision or not, or to do whatever they can to avoid probate through the decisions are going to be made on the circumstances. So for all of us, one of the things I think, again, that we want to impart is as much as you can be open-minded, get things out in front of you before it becomes, an emergency, you're going to be in a better position to make better decisions. And Stanley, there were two things, the reverse mortgage and.
My mom passed away over 10 years ago, and I was the executor of the will. And we took care of everything, and then my attorney, I went to him and I said, I need to close out the estate. He said, no, you don't. So does an estate close out? Can you leave it open forever, even though there's no activity? That's what I don't know.
Yes, sir. And in fact, that's the primary practice of most probate attorneys, is to leave the estate open most of the time. If it's a simple will situation, the idea being that a lot of times someone passes away and they probate their estate, and then you find out 10 years later that your dad actually was a 1/8 owner of some mineral rights out in another state. So that way you don't have to restart the probate process. The estate is still open. We can do what we need to do more efficiently in order to transfer title to that asset that we've discovered later. And there's just no requirement that an estate be closed. And so that's pretty typical. It seems counterintuitive. It seems like there should be a bow put on top of it and everything's done now. But typical practice nowadays in Texas is to leave the estate open. Yes, sir.
Other questions,
Well, I'll address the financial side of it, and then you can do the more the family dynamic nuances behind it. But my first question that I ask my clients is, do you want to stay in your home through end of life? Most people, our ideal situation is we die peacefully in our sleep, but the reality is that may not be our actual way it plays out. So I ask them, how will you know when it's time to move? And the reason why I ask that question is it can be a different variety of reasons. It can be when there's a fall that happens and now that 2-story house is no longer appropriate anymore. It's too dangerous. Or it could be whenever there's a financial piece to it. We're spending too much on those caregivers that come into the home, and it may be more cost effective to sell the home and move into an assisted living community or an independent living community or what have you. And my job with that is to look at the cost of everything, because sometimes it can be more cost effective to move into a community if you have an extremely high level of care. But if you're a low level of care and you just need a little bit of, here and there help with groceries, help with laundry, maybe living at home may make more sense for you. And certainly when you talk about the spousal dynamic and the kids, that's more of I can answer that question, but that's now Spencer's wheelhouse.
You opened up a very good and very extensive conversation. Where I start with that is I tend to think as close to the person or the couple or the family as possible. What would make that person the happiest? What would that person want? I mean, sometimes just even if what you want is not what you can have or obtain, knowing what you want is extremely important. So in my 27-year experience in the field of aging here in San Antonio, whether it's been managing nursing homes, residential settings, or now as a consultant, families typically start with what do they want and go from there. Thinking about what the support is like. If someone's needs change and that person can't do the things, can't manage the money, can't manage the house, can't keep up with all the medical issues that are going on, is there someone else that's helping with that? If there is, that's different than if someone is not available, or if someone is available but that's just not, I can't go there. There are a lot of families that really do love each other and want what's best for mom or dad or my sister, but really feel ill-equipped or too close, too emotional to deal with it. And they really value a third party, whether it be a professional or a person from Sunday school, that kind of thing. So I would say it starts with desires and wants, and then you look at, you enlarge the circle. Who's there to help? What planning's been done? Sometimes the legal planning, you have to look at that. What are the financial components? What are the spiritual? You look at those, and then what I say, look at as much information that you think is relevant, and then go back to what you want and what's going on in your situation and say, okay, with all of what I know, do I need to leave the house? Even though I told my mom I would never put you in a facility, ever. But here we are with these set of circumstances, and I feel a little bit like I got to eat crow, and I just have to say, you know what? We can't sustain this. So anyway, we could talk extensively, but I would just say, think about all those variables, the players who were involved, and then make the best decisions. And one thing I think most of you probably, you don't have to nod, or you can raise your hand, but we all experience life with people that we work with, people that we socialize with. So we see people that are making these decisions a lot. That's an important part of this too. Utilize your system and say, oh, I understand that you just went and you recently met with your attorney and you did some updating to your estate planning. How did it go? Or, oh, you had a loved one, you went to this assisted living memory care. What was it like there? it's okay and good to ask people their experiences. The more you are inquisitive and ask, the more people you visit in these places, you're going to have more information to make your own decisions if it comes to you.
I understand it's a difficult question, and I also understand the financial that can rule. And I'm trying to eliminate that and get down to which I have watched people that have stayed at home and they seem so alone, particularly if there's not a spouse and they've just got help coming in the day. They are so isolated. On the other hand, if you're in that kind of shape, I'm not sure going into a facility where you have to live, you don't know anybody else, and you're bedridden or enclosed in one room. I don't know that you're any better off sitting in a facility. I don't think you benefit. So it's down to, is the health care equally good each way? Is that a consideration at all?
Well, is the healthcare, whether it's provided at home, whether you're in a smaller setting with less people, hopefully, or if you're in a larger setting with more people and activities, it better. Again, it really does depend. And this afternoon, I'm going to see a client who was living in assisted living. She was already in a community setting around people, 3 meals a day. She was isolated because her husband had deceased. Her vision was poor enough. She didn't have a telephone. She didn't see any reason to turn the lights on, even if it was 2 p.m. She just was. I left that 2-hour visit thinking, if I wasn't depressed now, I am, but then I am now. True story. She was found unresponsive. They couldn't rouse her. She went to the hospital. I saw her in the hospital. And she was a different person. She was happy. She was smiling and happy. She wasn't making a whole lot of sense. But I could see in her body language something different than when I was in her apartment, when she just kept talking about, I used to know people's names. Now I can't read the directory. Why would I call someone I can't see? I mean, it was nothing. It was all Eeyore, woe is me. And while she wasn't she was not oriented to where she was, things like that. The tension was gone from her body in the hospital bed. She was laughing. She was saying some pretty crazy things. But the spirit was there. Now she's in a nursing home and she has hospice. And I see her. She has a trust at a bank. And so the bank hired us to help them make sure their beneficiary's doing okay. Everyone says she has come to life. I mean, being unresponsive in her apartment and then coming out, yes, she has more help. She's come alive. She's become more social. She likes being in there. The other situation, so you just don't know. And I encourage people also, and I think Brennan and Kelly would agree, when you look at your situation and you evaluate the pieces of the puzzle and then decide, okay, what can we do? What do we want to do? I encourage people to not be afraid to take a leap of faith and walk through a door, even if you are scared, even if you're not sure if the best medical care is going to be in that memory care, or if bringing that help in the home is going to make a decision. You don't always have to be stuck with a decision. Not everything that you do is irrevocable. There's some things you want to be permanent, and then you want some flexibility. We work with families all the time that move. I talked to a daughter by email yesterday. She's been a client for 6 or 7 years, and we're doing great. We've got 10 minutes. We're doing great, I think. She contacts me when she hits that brick wall, and she's hit a lot in the last. She has moved her mom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 7 times. I just had to we're doing a quick count. And 2 weeks ago, she had just moved her mom into a licensed assisted living in January. Here we are in March. And I was just checking in with her to see if the coaching that she hired us to provide gave her some help. And then she said, oh, yes, it did. This. Oh, I moved my mom. Again, she wanted to move her mom. I knew she wanted to move her mom, so she has moved her mom. And so at least one thing I can say and give her credit for is she's not been afraid to make a transition if she feels it's not working. She doesn't want to just jerk her mom around and live every place in town, but she's not going to settle for something if she doesn't think it's the best health care. And as consultants, families expect us to make recommendations if we don't feel as if it's working. A financial advisor, Kelly, is not going to say, well, we've been going along for 5 years, and let's just keep things the way they are. If she feels, okay, at this stage in your life, your needs have changed and you need a little more cash flow, have you thought about this? Brennan and the attorneys at his firm, are going to say, okay, if they have ongoing work with you periodically, say, okay, we did this long-term plan 6 months ago. Sometimes it can change quickly, right? It can change quickly. And he's obligated as your attorney to say, okay, now let's look at where we are today versus where we were then. These are some things I think you ought to be prepared for or aware of. So, excellent.
Just real quick. I think having worked in the community before as well, I dealt with that. That was a day in and day out conversation I had. One thing that you will find the positive of being in a community is there's always other people around. So even if you yourself are not a social butterfly, I used to have a resident that she would just leave her door open. She stayed in her apartment except to come out for meals, but she just liked having that human interaction, seeing people walk down the hallway. She had housekeeping that would come in and clean her apartment. If she wanted to go to any social activities, she could, but she mostly just came out for meals and that was it. But she thrived better in that situation than being alone at home. So really, I think the socialization is really the secret to a long life. And when you self-isolate and stay closed off, that really deteriorates your overall health and well-being. And yeah, it's hard to say goodbye to a house that you have 30 plus years memory in. You had Christmases, you had birthdays, you had special occasions, but the one thing I always tell people is just because you've sold the house doesn't mean you're selling the memories. So it's not a conversation that can be accomplished within 5 minutes, and it's not a set it and forget it. It constantly evolves because your needs change and evolve. And that's why it's not a one and done conversation with any of us. We want to be a part of your story because things change, and we want to make sure that we are helping you achieve your goals as things change.
Excellent. I would also encourage us all to be as proactive in having conversations with people about what we want, asking opinions, going through an experience like some of what we talked about with somebody that you trust and love can be very helpful than being at it alone. And everyone's experience is going to be different. So just try to be as open-minded as possible, and just not be afraid to try things. I tell people that when I went through my academic training, it was a culture shock when I first stepped into my office as a full-time administrator of a nursing home and looking around thinking, okay, I studied all this, I did some practice, but that really is nothing. I mean, this is it now. This is where it really is real. I got to figure out how to manage this entire beast that I'm supposedly trained to do. I begin to question, can I really do this? I'm sure everybody, when your first job, if you get licensed as an attorney. I mean, my wife went to law school, and she felt a little intimidated, thinking, okay, I'm just too green. Why would someone hire me? But you know what? That's part of the cycle of life. So, other questions? Yes, ma'am. We had some people come in. Yes, ma'am. Oh, thank you, Mary, for passing the microphone.
Well, I think a lot of seniors, if they're familiar with friends last year. My attorney knew my father was in there, and when I told her I'm going to have to fire you, she was so angry, and she said, you just have unrealistic expectations. This happens everywhere. I said, you know what, you should not be an attorney. And I tried to get her disbarred. She did have to pay a total of 6 attorneys to defend her to keep her license. And now, 10 years later, she was well past 65 and she has retired. But that was 10 years. And that just weighs so heavily on me that not only is this an attorney who makes these recommendations thinking this is acceptable for people to be sexually assaulted in senior care facilities, but that she continued to serve, and that there is, I mean, the police will not take a report because they say, well, we have this, and it seems like assaulting the most vulnerable people in our society is acceptable if it's in a memory care, because you have to go to the state, and then they have their little thing, and they don't, this is a crime anywhere else. It should be a crime. In memory care facilities, they don't put locks on the doors. So a lot of seniors don't even want to go anywhere for good reason.
Yeah, I think an experience like that leaves all of us just a little bit speechless. And let's be honest, there are some really harsh things that do happen. This is a cruel, evil, fallen, broken world. While I'm much more of an optimist than I am not, dealing with harsh realities and fighting for what's right, advocacy, not putting up with things that you don't have to. As a former nursing home administrator, and now that I go into them and I leave, I guess visit clients and I leave, I realize that we're all fallible at some point. I mean, none of us really can just make all of those issues just not exist or go away. And so some people that just cannot make that move and go to a nursing home, or because of an experience like that, just are so scarred that it just ruins it for everything. Having an advocate, having someone that can at least kind of work the system and be present, that I have seen, back to the question about kind of the medical care, the families that visit and are vocal, participate in the loved one's plan of care, go to the appointments, they tend to elevate the level of care delivered. Not every single time. Sometimes the kids come in and try to take over mom's health care and sabotage it, but most of the time it can be helpful. If I go in every week to a nursing home, those people know that I'm working with families that are trying to pick these places. They know I'm a referral source, and they know the families hired us to kind of just help coordinate. And I know what questions to ask. That presence and advocacy and not dealing with it and confronting like you did, even though it didn't prevent the things that were very, very horrific, that can help make sure things don't happen again or can improve things. Other parting shots. It is about lunchtime. Kelly, Brennan, and I are going to each sit at separate tables. We're going to stay through lunch till about 1 o'clock. And Stan and Mary, you probably will turn it over to you. But we're grateful to be back. We are available for times like this. And that round table, when you first walked in, our cards, we just had some limited stuff. If you have an interest, you're welcome to pick up some stuff to fill your bag with. But we're just honored that you're thinking these kinds of things, that you are proactive. The more I'm with the Keys group, the more I really appreciate what's going on here at First Pres. So with that, I'll turn it over to Stanley.
If I could add something, and I mentioned this last time we were here, and I wanted to say that again. I was in commercial banking for 27 years, and I can't speak for investment accounts. But when someone passes, the first thing the bank does is they freeze any account that is there. Checking, savings, CDs. Next thing they do is they pull the signature card, and they find out who has access to it, and also if they're the beneficiary. If they're the beneficiary, it's like they were saying, that account automatically goes to the beneficiary. It is not part of probate. If there is no beneficiary, then that account is frozen until probate decides what is done. So what I always tell people is make sure you know what you sign when you sign a signature card. Just because it's a joint account, husband and wife, does not mean the surviving spouse will get that money, because it can be structured, with survivorship or without survivorship. So if you can, please look at it. And if you know what you originally signed, that's great. But a lot of people do not know. And I've been through this seriously hundreds of times where the family comes in and they did not know that they did not have access to that money. It is locked up until, the executor is signed and they decide where the money goes on that deal. Excuse me?
And the safe deposit.
Exactly. If you have a safe deposit box, you cannot go into that box. You cannot go into it unless you're a beneficiary and you're authorized to go into that. So that is important. And that's why when you see these accounts like Chime and NetSpend and stuff where you can go on the internet and you can sign up for it, if someone has $2,000 in the account and they die, you have no idea what's going to happen to that money. So I always advise people, please go to a bank and talk to a customer service representative. Like these people, they're experts. If you go to Frost or Wells Fargo, they'll tell you when you're signing it, there's different ways you can set it up. And there are different ways you can set up accounts. And it is critical when someone passes. As long as someone's alive and everything's fine, but as soon as someone passes, it's immediately locked up. It's frozen. All right. Here you go, Mary. You want to have Gary do the prayer? Okay.
Thank you, Spencer and Kelly and Brennan, for being here today. Okay, there we go. Thank y'all for being here today, and hope y'all enjoy your meal. Joe will be back next week. I'm sure he was really tired. Yesterday was a really long day for him with the wedding, but the wedding went beautiful, beautiful bride, and Daddy did a good job giving her away, and then he got to do the ceremony for them. But it was really a beautiful day. So anyway, he will be back next week, and we're going to have Gary Ryan come up right now and give us a prayer for our food.
Thank you. Would you all bow, including our, what do they call this? Online. All right. Sorry about that. I had a brain freeze. Would you all bow for a word of prayer, please? Heavenly Father, we thank you for being here with us today. We thank you, Lord, that you have guided us throughout this past week and have brought us safely here today. We thank you for the rain that has happened, Father, and for the sunshine now. We ask, Father, that you would, and we are grateful for Spencer Brown, Brennan Bowes, and Kelly Finley for the program that they have given us. We've all gained some knowledge from that. And Lord, we now ask that you would be with us as we have our food, and that you would bless it and use it to our body's nourishment, and keep us, Lord, always faithful to your service. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.